Time, reality, and psychology. Opening hook. Time. We live inside it, or at least we believe we do. Every clock that ticks, every wrinkle on the skin, every sunrise and sunset seems to whisper the same undeniable truth. Time is passing, moving, flowing forward like a river that cannot be reversed. But what if this river we call time does not really exist? What if the calendar, the ticking second, the movement from past to future is only a mental construction, a psychological illusion, one that shapes our entire reality, but has no ultimate ground beyond perception? The past exists only as memory. You cannot return to it. Right now, try to touch it. Try to walk back into yesterday. What happens? You find only stories, images within the mind, neural imprints shaped by attention and emotion. The past is not real in any independent way. It is a psychic recording. It is haunting or nostalgic remembrance, but never tangible. And the future, it exists only as prediction. Your hopes, your fears, your plans are merely projected images cast forward by the mind. They feel real because you emotionally invest in them. But if you try to hold on to tomorrow, it slips away, always unavailable, always out of reach. The only place in which both these ghosts, memory and prediction, have substance is here now, in the present moment of experience. The entire drama of before and after collapses into a single point of awareness, the eternal now. And if this is true, then time, this thing we live by, stress over, measure our worth with, does not exist at all. What exists is change, energy shifting, entropy increasing, and the human mind narrating this change through the story of time. Reality itself then becomes unstable. If time is a story constructed by consciousness, could reality itself be the same? Perhaps reality is not a fixed, objective law, not an iron framework of the universe independent of human perception, but instead something pliable, observer-dependent, rooted in perspective. What if what you call real is not what is, but what is seen? The intersection between the environment and the perceiver who brings it into being. These questions are not simply philosophical, they reshape psychology. They challenge how we think about experience, memory, healing, trauma, anticipation, meaning. To understand time and reality in this way is to pull at the very foundation of what it means to exist. And today, we are going to step into this labyrinth together, unraveling the illusion of time, rethinking reality, and understanding how deeply psychology, your own mind, creates, sustains, and dissolves the worlds you inhabit. Memory, prediction, and the illusion of time. If time is not real in the ultimate sense, then what exactly are the past and the future? Psychology gives us a clue. The past is memory, and the future is prediction. Both are mental constructs created by the machinery of the brain to give coherence to experience. When you recall a childhood event, the sound of laughter in a family gathering, or the sting of humiliation in a classroom, you might feel as though you are returning to that moment, but you are not. The neurons in your brain are reconstructing fragments of data, weaving together sensory traces, emotions, and learned narratives into a memory you can experience now. Memory is never a replay. It is always a recreation, a performance happening in the present. This means the past is not a place behind us. It is a living process inside us. Our identity, our story of who we are, depends on memory. Yet that memory is mutable. Studies in psychology show how malleable memory is, how suggestion, belief, or even simply the act of recall can alter it. The past is rewritten again and again, fading and reshaping every time we revisit it. In this sense, the past is not fixed. It is fluid and evolving. And then there is the future. The brain constantly projects forward, an evolutionary adaptation for survival. Every time you anticipate danger, hope for reward, or plan your next meal. Your mind is simulating possibilities. These predictions allow you to prepare, but they also burden you with anxiety and expectation. The future feels like a real space waiting for you, but like the past, it has no independent existence. It only exists as thought, mental rehearsals, scenarios running in the imagination. Think about this clearly. When you are stressed about a deadline next week, or excited about a reunion tomorrow, where are those experiences happening? They are not happening in the future. They are happening now, in your body, in your heart rate, in your nervous system's arousal. The future lives inside the present as anticipation. So we are caught in this cycle, remembering and predicting, replaying and imagining. The mind uses these processes to stabilize reality, to give you the illusion of a continuous self moving through time. Without memory, there is no self. Without future prediction, there is no sense of purpose. Time, as we know it psychologically, is less about clocks and calendars and more about the way the brain holds continuity. This is why trauma is often described as being trapped in the past. A traumatic memory does not stay back there. It intrudes into the present moment, overwhelming perception and distorting the sense of now. Likewise, anxiety is not about the future. It is about the body living now in a predicted threat. Both trauma and anxiety prove what psychology suggests, that neither the past nor the future exists independently. They exist only as present constructs. Seen from this perspective, time is a psychological tool, not a universal dimension. It keeps us oriented, but it also deceives us. We think we are moving in a line from birth to death, but really what we experience is a constant unfolding of the now, with the mind eternally stitching together what it calls past and future. And here lies a radical realization. If the past is memory and the future is prediction, then the only reality we ever directly experience is the present moment. The now is not a fleeting fragment trapped between two infinities. It is the only dimension that ever actually exists. Entropy, change, and the eternal now. Yet, one might ask, if time does not exist, why do we see aging, decay, growth? Why do stars burn out? Why do bodies weaken? Why do civilizations rise and fall? There must be an arrow, mustn't there? Science has an answer for this too. What we often call time is in fact the process of entropy, the tendency for energy to disperse, for order to decay into disorder. A glass shatters when dropped, but never spontaneously reassembles. The human body grows old but never younger. These asymmetries of nature give rise to our perception of time. Entropy, however, does not prove time exists. It only proves change exists. Things shift, dissolve, evolve. Your mind interprets this phenomenon as flow and narrates it as time passing. But perhaps it is not time moving forward. It is only energy transforming. This insight reshapes how we might live. Imagine seeing life not as a timeline you must rush across, but as a continual transformation you participate in. The wrinkle forming on your hand is not evidence of time being lost. It is matter reorganizing, energy shifting, molecules dancing in a new pattern. Entropy is life's unfolding drama, and you are aware of it only in the eternal moment of now. What terrifies us about entropy is that it points to death. The body will one day lose its coherence, the mind will unravel, identity will scatter. But even death, stripped of the story of time, is not in the future. It is not waiting for you. Death, like birth, exists only as possibility, as thought in the present. When it finally arrives, it will arise not in some distant time, but in the eternal now, just like everything else you have ever experienced. This is why the greatest spiritual traditions, from Buddhism to Stoicism, emphasize presence, not because the past and the future are meaningless, but because their meaning unfolds only in the now. When you remember now. When you plan now. When entropy reshapes your body, it does it now. Time vanishes when deeply engaged. When you are absorbed in art, music, or love, the ticking of the clock falls away and only immediacy remains. This is not an illusion. It is insight. It reveals that the eternal now is not a spiritual fantasy, but the psychological reality in which all things occur. Reality as observer-dependent. If time is illusion, then it leads us to the next daring question: is reality itself stable, or is it too an illusion generated by perception? Albert Einstein once said, "Reality is merely an illusion, albeit a very persistent one." Modern physics, cognitive neuroscience, and psychology suggest he wasn't exaggerating. What we call reality is never experienced raw. It is filtered, interpreted, reconstructed, and shaped by the observer. Let's consider perception. When light strikes your eyes, no image transfers into your brain. Instead, photons trigger chemical reactions in retinal cells, electrical signals race along the optic nerve, and then neural networks in the brain build a visual representation. What you see is not the world itself. It is the world translated into an internal model. The same is true for sound, taste, touch, smell. You are not perceiving objects out there, but rather brain-generated reconstructions based on signals. And here comes the shocking truth. Perception is not passive. The brain actively fills in missing details, resolves contradictions, and edits for coherence. Reality is observer-dependent, a narrative created in the mind. This becomes evident when we encounter illusions. A mirage in the desert looks like water, though none exists. An optical illusion can make us see motion where there is none. Our brain constructs a reality because it expects certain patterns, because it predicts what should be there. Reality then is not fixed law. It is an ongoing conversation between perception and expectation. Psychology calls this predictive coding. The brain doesn't simply receive the world, it predicts it and then tests those predictions against incoming signals. What you perceive is a mixture of sensory data and the brain's hypothesis. This is why two witnesses can recall the same event differently. Reality is shaped as much by the observer as by the observed. This principle extends beyond perception into meaning. Consider two people standing on a cliff, watching the sunset. The first feels awe, gratitude, transcendence. The second feels loneliness, despair, the weight of passing life. Did they see the same sunset? Yes. Did they experience the same reality? No. Their internal lenses, their histories, emotions, beliefs, constructed two entirely different worlds. If reality depends on the observer, then absolute natural law becomes less certain. We may uncover patterns, equations, and measurements, but those too are mediated by the human mind. Even science is a lens, a structured way of perceiving and symbolizing phenomena. This is not to say reality is arbitrary or that anything goes. The physical world resists certain interpretations. You can't decide to fly simply by imagining, but the meaning, the felt quality, the psychological experience of reality is not objective. It is deeply tied to the observer's state of consciousness. This explains why despair can make life feel heavy and meaningless, while joy can make the same circumstances feel radiant and purposeful. The world out there didn't change. You changed, and with that change came a different world. So if time is a construct and reality is observer-dependent, what do we truly live inside? Not a fixed universe, but a psychological experience, a subjective theater where memory, prediction, perception, and meaning converge in the present moment. The psychology of time perception. To go further, let us examine how the mind creates not only reality, but also the sensation of time itself. Cognitive psychology reveals that our inner clock is deeply imperfect and heavily dependent on attention, emotion, and context. Have you ever noticed how time drags when you are bored, but flies when you are engaged? This is the mind revealing its mechanics. Our perception of time is tied to how much new information we process. When bored, we process so little that time feels painfully slow. When immersed, we process so much novelty that memory compresses the experience into what feels like an instant. Emotion also distorts time. Fear stretches minutes into eternities. Waiting for test results, sitting in the hospital waiting room, trapped in uncertainty, the seconds crawl. In contrast, moments of love, inspiration, flow, these vanish almost instantly, leaving us asking, where did the time go? Neuroscience locates time perception in a network of brain regions, the basal ganglia, cerebellum, and prefrontal cortex among them. But crucially, it is not like a clock ticking inside us. It is a dynamic construction arising from patterns of neural firing. And because it is construction, it is vulnerable to illusion. Drug studies reveal this further. Psychedelic substances, for instance, can dissolve time, stretching seconds into eternities or collapsing hours into moments. Meditation, too, often suspends linear time, bringing practitioners into an expanded now, where distinctions of past and future fade. What does this suggest? That the sense of time is not reality itself, but a psychological product, highly flexible, fragile, manipulable. Children perceive time differently than adults. A single summer in childhood feels vast, while adults think in years that fly by. Why? Because for children, every moment is fresh, filled with learning, novelty, and growth. For adults, routines dull the novelty, collapsing time. The experience of life feels shorter, not because time accelerates, but because familiarity compresses memory. Think about this. Time feels long when life is rich with presence and novelty. Time feels short when life is repetitive, automated, unconscious. In other words, you can engineer the quality of your life's duration, not by changing clocks, but by changing how present and engaged you are. So what we discover is powerful. If time is psychological, we hold influence over it. By altering attention, cultivating presence, embracing novelty, we can expand the felt quality of life. And if the only time that exists is now, then the question is not, how much time do I have left? But how present am I willing to be in the life I already have? Existential insights. The recognition that time is mental and reality is observer-dependent is disorienting, but also liberating. Let us explore the existential dimension. Carl Jung wrote of individuation, the process of becoming whole by integrating the shadow, uniting conscious and unconscious. Time, in Jung's view, was less about measurement and more about meaning. The psyche organizes events synchronistically as archetypal patterns, not strict clockwork. Dreams collapse past and future, giving us symbols of timeless psyche. Buddhism teaches similarly. The past is gone, the future is not yet. The only moment to awaken is now. This was not moral advice, it was ontology. The Buddha argued that clinging to memory and grasping for future are the roots of suffering because they pull us out of the only dimension we truly live in. To awaken is precisely to return to presence. Existential philosophers like Heidegger saw time as central to human being. For Heidegger, we are beings toward death, aware of finitude, therefore constructing meaning in the shadow of mortality. But even here, death is not a distant future, it is an ever-present possibility shaping the now. When people face mortality, serious illness, accidents, brushes with death, what do they often say? That time changed, that priorities shifted, that small moments suddenly became profound. Why? Because confronted with the collapse of future illusions, They enter the raw immediacy of now. This insight can reorder psychological life. Instead of asking, "What must I achieve before time runs out?" we might ask, "How fully can I live in the moment that is already here?" Instead of chasing a future that never arrives, we root ourselves into present awareness where reality is deepest. This is not passivity, it is the opposite. To live fully present is to act with intensity, clarity, and purpose. The past no longer imprisons you, the future no longer enslaves you. What remains is freedom, where action rises from presence rather than fear. So, what are we left with? Time, we discover, is memory and prediction, both mental constructs replayed and rehearsed in the theater of the present. Entropy moves the universe forward, but the only arena where change is felt is now. Reality is not fixed outside us, but observer-dependent, shaped by perception, meaning, and consciousness. Psychologically, this realization is not abstract. It is medicine, because if the past is only memory, you can heal it now. If the future is only prediction, you can rewrite it now. Reality itself bends to the quality of presence you bring. You are not a prisoner of time, nor of an objective reality imposed upon you. You are the co-creator of your lived experience, shaping meaning through awareness. The illusion of time dissolves once you understand all of life unfolds only where you are, here, now. So the challenge becomes not how much time you have, but how deeply you will enter this moment. Will you let your past torment you? Will you let your imagined future haunt you? Or will you awaken to the one door that has ever opened, this eternal present, where reality is born anew every instant? The clocks will keep ticking, the seasons will keep turning, entropy will unfold as it always has. But none of that diminishes the truth. You live not in the prison of time, but in the freedom of now. And the more present you are, the more infinite life becomes. The past is memory. The future is prediction. Reality is perception. What you truly are, awareness itself, exists outside of all of it. Step into now, and you step into eternity. The hook. What if I told you that the life you are living right now is not the ultimate reality? What if you are not what you think you are, not limited to this mind, this body, this stage of flesh and bone? Imagine instead that you are an eternal spiritual being, temporarily slipping into the costume of a human, playing out a chapter in the grand theater of existence. Life is not punishment, nor accident, nor mere biology, but a creative game, an immersive experience written by consciousness itself. The truth of reality is stranger, softer, and more profound than we have been taught. Reality is not solid in the way we assume. It is malleable, projected from a deeper realm of consciousness. And more than that, it behaves like a mirror. It reflects back to you not what you desire superficially, but the deeper beliefs, assumptions, and unspoken truths you carry within you. The outer world is your inner world turned inside out. This is a message both spiritual and psychological. Spiritual, because it awakens us to the eternal, the infinite self beneath the shifting masks of incarnation. Psychological, because it reminds us that the mind is not a passive observer, but an artist, an architect of its experiences. Together, these perspectives reveal a radical truth. Change your inner state, shift your consciousness, align your beliefs, and reality itself bends to meet your vibration. Humans as eternal spiritual beings, from the dawn of history, humanity has sensed it was more than temporary flesh. Ancient traditions whispered that we are eternal sparks, divine essences that travel through incarnations. The Hindu scriptures call it Atman. Christian mystics speak of the soul. Buddhism calls it the ever-present awareness that persists as conditions change. Even psychology, when pushed to its borders through thinkers like Carl Jung, points to something eternal in us. the archetypal patterns that exceed one lifetime. To imagine this, think of an actor. On stage, the actor becomes the role, kneeling, crying, fighting, as the script demands. The audience sees only the character, but the actor knows both the character and the self that exists beyond it. Similarly, in everyday life, we are so deeply immersed in the role of I, this person, with this name, this story, this face, that we forget the eternal actor behind the role. Spiritual traditions remind us, you are not just the role, you are the one playing it. And here is where psychology provides insight. Much of our suffering comes because we identify completely with the temporal mask, believing, for example, I am my trauma, I am my limitations, I am my aging body. But when consciousness expands, when the spiritual is integrated, something miraculous happens. We hold those experiences more lightly. I had that experience, but I am not the experience. I felt pain, but I am not the pain. I am the one who is aware of it all. Like a player in a vast game, the spirit chooses this level, these challenges, this body. From the higher vantage point, every apparent obstacle is part of the chosen storyline, an opportunity to experience growth, resilience, compassion, joy, even contrast that fuels eventual awakening. Life is not accidental, it is deliberate. A field of play where spiritual beings taste the density of matter, only to remember eventually that they came from light. Reality as a projection of consciousness. Now, let's move deeper. If we are eternal beings having a human experience, what then is this thing we call reality? You might imagine it as fixed, a hard physical world existing independently of you. But spiritual psychology suggests something radical. Reality is projected by consciousness itself. Think of it this way. When you dream at night, an entire world arises full of landscapes, people, events. Within the dream, it feels real. But the moment you awaken, you realize all along it was a projection of your own mind. Now imagine if waking reality operates on a similar principle. What if what we call the physical universe is more like a dream dreamed collectively by billions of souls, a multi-layered projection of consciousness? Modern psychology can actually support this. Cognitive science acknowledges perception is not passive but active. The brain filters sensory input and constructs a world model. We never see raw reality. We see an edited version shaped by our beliefs, expectations, and memories. On a collective level, entire societies agree on what counts as real, and that agreement becomes the framework of the shared dream. This means reality is plastic. Spiritual teachers from Neville Goddard to the Buddha have insisted what you assume to be true, combined with the energy of belief, manifests outwardly. If you believe life is hostile, you confirm it. If you believe life is creative and abundant, you meet opportunities you wouldn't have otherwise noticed. Psychology confirms this through the concept of the expectancy effect. What you expect influences not only your perception but even the behavior of others toward you. So reality is not imposed. It is co-authored. Each of us writes with the pen of consciousness. And collectively, when enough minds agree, entire civilizations emerge. Languages, technologies, wars, cultures, even gods. Nothing exists outside of consciousness. You are projecting and perceiving simultaneously, caught inside a dance of your own creative power. Reality as a mirror. If reality is consciousness projected outward, then the question becomes, what does it show us? This brings us to the mirror metaphor. Reality is not random, it reflects. Like a mirror, it does not invent new forms. It simply gives back to you what you are being. Have you noticed that themes repeat in your life? Patterns of relationships, recurring struggles. They are not coincidences, they are reflections. If you carry an inner belief such as I am unworthy, you will find life presenting situations that echo this assumption. Not because reality hates you, but because it mirrors to you what is within, so that you may become conscious of it. From a psychological lens, this is shadow work. Carl Jung taught that the unconscious contains all the aspects we repress. Those unacknowledged parts project outward, manifesting through people who seem to trigger us. In truth, they are mirrors showing us something about ourselves. Hatred, admiration, envy, all are signals of the inner content being reflected by outer figures. The world is the unconscious unveiled. Spiritually, this is nothing less than the soul's teaching tool. If life only gave us what we wanted superficially, learning would halt. Instead, reality mirrors the deeper, often hidden content, urging us toward transformation. When you shift the internal image, the mirror responds. Consider this example. Someone constantly thinks, "I am unlucky." They approach opportunities half-heartedly, expecting failure. Their body language gives off doubt. Reality mirrors it back. They miss chances. Doors close. But when they shift beliefs, when they affirm deeply, "Life supports me," opportunities abound. Their behavior alters, their energy changes, and circumstances rearrange. The mirror reflects a new truth. This then is the practical magic of life, to play consciously with the mirror. Rather than cursing the reflection, we learn to adjust the self that stands before it. Living consciously, the path of awakening. What does this mean for your everyday life? It means that every challenge is feedback. Every joy is feedback. The world is your canvas, showing you what beliefs you paint upon it. To awaken is to stop blaming the mirror and instead transform within. Spiritual nature and psychology meet here. Techniques like affirmations, visualization, meditation, and cognitive reframing are not shallow. They are tools for shifting inner states. By repeating a new belief long enough, you impress it into your subconscious. Life adjusts accordingly. When you see reality as a mirror, you take radical responsibility. You stop thinking, "Why is life against me?" and start asking, "What inside of me is being reflected?" This erases the victim mindset. You step into creator consciousness, and this realization that you are an eternal spiritual being, authoring reality, facing only your own reflection, liberates you. You laugh at the game-like quality of life. Fear dissolves. Death loses its sting, for what dies is only the costume, never the player. Life becomes less about winning or losing, and more about dancing, creating, learning, and remembering who you truly are. So who are you? Not the fleeting shadow that calls itself by your name, nor the anxious storyline of your roles. At your core, you are the timeless presence playing human. You are the consciousness projecting reality, shaping it through belief. You are the soul gazing into a mirror called life, seeing itself from infinite angles. When you understand this, life changes. Obstacles become opportunities. Triggers become teachers. Desires are not begged for but embodied, and death itself becomes no more frightening than removing a costume after a performance. Reality is not something that happens to you. It happens through you, as you. You are both actor and observer, both dreamer and dream. Your task is simple and profound: to remember, in every moment, that you are eternal, that you are the source, and that reality will always unfailingly mirror back what you are brave enough to believe. Law of assumption and psychology. Reality bends where conviction begins. You think the world is firm, absolute, external, but it reflects the shadows of your inner state. This is what Neville Goddard meant when he said, "An assumption, though false, if persisted in, will harden into fact." Read that carefully. Let it echo. Persistent ideas solidify into the walls of your life. Perception, repeated long enough, becomes confirmation. Assumptions crystallize into the facts you call reality. This is not fantasy. This is psychology at play. This is your subconscious obeying repetition. Consider it. Every belief you currently hold about money, love, health, worth, once began as thought. A thought you did not dismiss. One you rehearsed. One you repeated until it felt like truth. Perhaps others repeated it for you. Perhaps culture pressed it into your forming identity. Your mind, open in childhood, accepted suggestion after suggestion. This is how you learned who you are, even if who you are is part truth, part illusion. And yet, because persistent assumptions harden into fact, those illusions became the scaffolding of your tangible world. The mind does not care if the assumption is noble, healing, toxic, or destructive. It only hardens what is repeated. The subconscious is indifferent. Its soil accepts every seed, and repetition waters it until it grows strong. This is why propaganda works. This is why advertising works. This is why politicians repeat slogans that sound simplistic to the conscious mind, but drill deep into the subconscious until they become unquestioned social facts. And this, if you are awake, is why you can reclaim your authority and turn assumption into the tool of liberation rather than bondage. Neville Goddard framed it spiritually. He said consciousness is the only reality, and what you assume, you externalize. Psychology frames it scientifically. The brain reorganizes itself through repetition. Neuroplasticity ensures that the more you think a thought, the stronger the neural networks grow. The subconscious does not distinguish between external reality and internally imagined assumption. It accepts both. Eventually, your behaviors, perceptions, even bodily responses align with the assumed belief. Slowly, the world colludes. Life is bent toward your assumption, until the invisible belief becomes visible fact. Think of the placebo effect. Patients given a harmless sugar pill, told it is medicine, often improve. Why? Conviction hardened into physiological response. A false assumption persisted in, hardened into bodily fact. Or think of the nocebo effect, the opposite, where expectation of harm invites harm. A doctor says, "You will not walk again," and if believed, the command lodges as assumption, shaping the body. But another person, refusing to assume limitation against every medical prediction, rises again. The body follows belief. Now, step into your own life. Ask yourself, what if every boundary you face is a hardened assumption? The ceiling you call my reality, my circumstance, my identity, may not be reality at all, but an assumption cemented. Childhood messages like, you are average, money does not come easy, love is scarce, you are not attractive enough, you are not intelligent enough, you are not deserving. Assumptions repeated until they hardened into living walls. Walls you do not question, because you confuse persistence for truth. But Neville insists assumption creates, and psychology confirms, conviction drives perception. People do not see the world as it is. They see the world through their assumptions about it. Cognitive psychologists call them schemas, internal frameworks that filter what you notice and how you interpret it. If you assume you are unlucky, you filter experiences to confirm it. You dwell on proofs of failure, overlook opportunities, shrink from risks. Eventually, reality provides confirmation you are unlucky, but in truth, you were selective in perception, fueled by assumption. Now imagine changing the assumption. Imagine if you persisted in the belief that opportunities arise for you, that you are chosen, gifted, destined. At first it feels false. Your critical mind protests. Nonsense, no evidence. But Neville Goddard reminds us the critical mind objects because assumption has not yet hardened. The old belief rages, but persistence is the alchemy. Repetition forces the subconscious to reorganize. Slowly your selective attention shifts. You begin noticing openings invisible before. You take actions fueled with conviction rather than hesitation. Others respond differently to the confidence you radiate. Then something unexpected happens. Fact follows belief. This is the law of assumption. Not mere wishful thinking, not hollow affirmations muttered once a day, but an intentional choice of assumption, repeated until you embody it fully. It is not fantasy. It is psychological inevitability. The subconscious is programmed through persistence. Advertising executives know this. Why else repeat brand slogans thousands of times? Why drill music jingles into your nervous system until you cannot forget? Not because one repetition convinces, but because 1,000 do. Through sheer repetition, the brain accepts it as fact. The familiar becomes true. The assumption becomes life. Propaganda thrives on the same mechanism. Nations have been carried into wars, not by reality, but by repeated slogans and images calculated to saturate the subconscious. Political leaders weaponize psychological truth. Repeat a claim until dissenting thought is drowned. Soon, assumption crystallizes into collective fact. False, perhaps, but hardened nonetheless. This is the dangerous side of the same law. Those who understand assumption can enslave the minds of others unless those same minds awaken and begin to assume consciously rather than unconsciously. The difference between manipulation and mastery lies in who chooses the assumption. Are you repeating what society feeds you, or are you deliberately choosing the seed you wish to water? If false assumptions can harden into fact, what if you chosen a liberating falsehood? I am powerful. I am loved. I am free. At first, it may feel delusional, but so too did the lies instilled in you once feel delusional. You only accepted them because repetition grinded them into bone. Why then hesitate to engrave truths of your choosing? What you consciously assume, watered by persistence, hardens just the same. And observe, even psychology shows us the mechanics. Neural pathways strengthen with repetition. Brain imaging demonstrates how rehearsed thoughts create myelination, insulation of neurons that makes thoughts faster and more automatic. What you repeat becomes what you cannot help but believe. Call it faith, call it neuroscience. It is the same process. Now I ask you, whose voice lives rent-free in your head when you say, I cannot? Whose assumption are you persisting in? Your parents, your teachers, societies, the markets? Every voice you repeat becomes your own until you interrupt it. You are haunted by assumptions. Some are ghosts of ancestral trauma. Some are echoes of authority figures. Some are corporate jingles. Some are fears you rehearsed until they became your creed. And all of them, false or true, if persisted in long enough, hardened into fact. But here lies your power. You can persist in another assumption. This is not overnight transformation. This is war of persistence. You declare a belief today, your old self mocks it. You persist tomorrow. The mirror seems unchanged. Persistence seems futile. Yet one day the subconscious accepts it as law. That is the threshold. At that moment, conviction colors your tone, your micro-expressions, your posture. Others respond differently. Windows open where walls seemed permanent. Slowly the world rearranges around your unbending assumption because you finally refuse to bow to the appearances of the old. Neville taught, live in the end. Assume already that you are that which you desire. Embody it in imagination. Let your inner theater rehearse repeatedly until it outweighs doubt. The end becomes more real to the subconscious than the current circumstance. Then, naturally, behaviors align, actions synchronize, reality bends. Psychology calls this the self-fulfilling prophecy. If you assume success, your behaviors unconsciously align with success. You prepare more, risk more, notice more, and others, reading nonverbal signals, respond with trust. The outcome becomes self-confirming. The prophecy fulfills itself. Conversely, if you assume failure, you prepare half-heartedly, act hesitantly, broadcast weakness. Others withdraw. The failure you assumed fulfills itself. Thus life proves you right, because it reflects your conviction. So listen carefully. The world outside is not adversary, but mirror. A mirror hardened from assumptions you rehearsed too long. The task is not to plead with the mirror, but to change what you assume before the mirror, and keep persisting until reflection obeys. Neville once said, "Living faithfully in assumption is the hardest test, because everything outside screams contradiction. Delays mock, failures repeat. But persistence through contradiction is how the false assumption hardens, and the same obstinacy that makes ignorance dangerous becomes your triumph when applied consciously." Advertising, politics, religion, education, all already use this law. They know repetition is stronger than reason. They know people do not believe what is true. People believe what is repeated until it feels true. And if you, solitary soul, reclaim this, you can outgrow even the strongest programming. You can pierce inherited assumptions and declare new ones. Conviction is not gifted, it is forged through persistence. And so ask yourself, not theoretically, not casually, what assumption will you choose today, and persist in relentlessly until the world bends? Will you continue rehearsing the assumption of smallness, lack, failure, or will you defy appearances, persist in greatness, and watch falsehood harden into fact in your favor? Neville Goddard gave mystical language. Psychology gives scientific proof. History gives examples. Your life gives validation. All agree, assumption rules reality. Persist, and you are unstoppable. Fail, and you are someone else's programmed echo. The choice is not tomorrow. It is now. Assume, persist, harden, and watch the invisible become visible. Role of belief system psychology. What if I told you that everything you see, everything you touch, every struggle, every joy, every memory you carry is happening inside a dream? Not your dream, not my dream, but the dream of something infinitely vast, an incomprehensible mind that Hermetic philosophy calls the All. According to this ancient wisdom, the universe itself is mental. It is thought, shaped into forms, condensed into matter, painted across the canvas of eternity, like an idea becoming tangible. And right now, you are inside that idea. This is not metaphor. This is not just poetry. It is a statement that reality, at its core, is mental. Every tree, every star, every galaxy, every whisper of memory or imagination is the thought of the All, vibrating into experience. Just as you dream when you lie down to sleep at night, bringing forth whole landscapes with people and stories and events that seem real while they unfold, so too does the All dream. But the All does not wake. Its dream is existence itself. And you are part of that dream, both dreamt and dreaming at once. The Hermetic tradition, whispered through the Kybalion and echoed across centuries, begins with this declaration: the All is mind, the universe is mental. To understand this one principle is to hold the thread that untangles much of the mystery of existence. For if the universe is mental, then everything you know is only a movement of thought. Matter cannot be divorced from perception, because matter itself is perception. The chair you sit on, the horizon you see, the memory you recall, it is mind appearing as form. Think of the dream you had last night. Within that dream, people spoke to you. Streets stretched out endlessly. Maybe fear rose up. Maybe joy, maybe strangeness folded the landscape into impossible shapes. In that dream, did it not feel real? The sensations, emotions, and textures, they were convincing until you awoke. And then, what happened to the dream? It dissolved into nothing. Yet while it lasted, it was immersive, total, unquestionable. Hermetic philosophy argues that life itself is like this. What we call reality is dreamlike in essence, real as experience, unreal as permanence. Now, pause for a moment. Look at your own hands. Do you feel the certainty of their existence? That certainty is the power of the dream. Yet the mystics tell us, this too shall pass. Nothing material endures because matter itself is woven from the fleeting fabric of thought. The ancient Vedic tradition calls this Maya. Maya means illusion, not in the sense of total falsehood, but in the sense of appearance. The world appears, it feels present, heavy, real, but it is Brahman, the infinite consciousness that is the substratum upon which all appearances dance. Just as a wave rises on the ocean and disappears without ever leaving the ocean, so too does the world appear and vanish within the eternal sea of consciousness. This is Maya. You cannot hold it, it keeps shifting, because it is only the dreamlike play of Brahman, the All. If the Vedas called it Maya, Hermeticism called it the mental principle, and across Sufi poetry, Rumi sang it differently. He called it love. He said, "We are not a drop in the ocean. We are the ocean in a drop." His words are not metaphor, but mystical testament. You are the universe itself, dreaming yourself as a fragment. The pain you feel, the joy you feel, the longing you feel, all arise from separation that is never real. The lover and the beloved, the seeker and the sought, the created and the creator are mirrors facing each other in infinite reflection. Once this is seen, the illusion begins to tremble. And what about parallel realities? If the universe is dreamlike, then multiple dreams unfold simultaneously. The All does not dream linearly, it dreams infinitely, infinite dimensions, infinite lifetimes, infinite selves, all superimposed and layered like the pages of a vast unwritten book. Mystics across cultures whisper of it, yogis who describe countless lokas, worlds upon worlds, Sufis who fall into states of ecstasy, where time folds upon itself, physicists who now calculate infinite universes as possible mathematical outcomes of quantum reality. All is mind, and mind has no boundary. But when you hear this, does it free you or does it terrify you? To live in a dream means nothing is solid. It means what you call failure or victory, gain or loss, is as transient as last night's fantasy. Hold too tightly, and it dissolves anyway. Ignore it, and it still dissolves. What then remains? What is the point of existing in a dream that endlessly shifts? The mystics tell us the point is awakening, not to escape the dream, but to recognize it as dream. In your nightly dreams, the moment you realize, I am dreaming, the dream transforms. You are lucid, awake, able to move with awareness. So too in life. To understand that you are within the mind of the All is to grow lucid in existence. You stop clinging desperately to appearances and begin living consciously, playing gracefully in the game of Maya. You smile at sorrow, knowing it too is ephemeral. You hold joy tenderly, knowing it too is passing. And through it all, you awaken to the deeper truth that behind appearances is the one mind that is dreaming everything, including you, and you are not separate from that mind. You are that. To recognize that you are both the dreamed character and the dreamer is to step into mystery. Somewhere deep within you there is an awareness, subtle but undeniable, that whispers, this is not all that there is. You hear it after moments of déjà vu, when an event plays out and you feel you have lived it before. You sense it when you lose yourself in a sunset, when time dissolves and presence burns brightly. You feel it when love overwhelms you, stripping away your defenses, and suddenly the entire world seems like a reflection of something vast and unspeakable. That whisper, That sense of infinite depth beyond the surface is the call of the all within you. It is the dreamer hinting to the dreamed that they are one and the same. The Hermetic masters taught that to grasp the mental nature of the universe is the beginning of mastery. Because if all is mind, then thoughts carry power. Not positive thinking in the superficial sense, but the recognition that the very patterns of your mind align with the laws of reality's unfolding. Your beliefs, your expectations, the images you hold, these are not shadows behind life, they are life. To change them is to shift the dream around you. Deep down you know this, don't you? When you shift your inner state, suddenly people respond differently. Opportunities flow. The world reflects back the new vibration. It has always been so, the outer mirrors the inner, because both exist inside the dream of mind. But it's not just personal manifestation. The Hermetic teaching is bigger, wilder. It speaks of cosmic mentalism. Everything from galaxies colliding to the breath you take this very moment is the unfolding of a greater mind. Just as every cell in your body is a microcosm within you, so too are you a microcosm of the all. And just as your thoughts shape your inner world, the all thinks universes into being. Every dimension, every law of physics, every lifetime, it is all thought crystallized into experience. Now, compare this with the wisdom of India's Vedas. The rishis declared, all this is Brahman. The forests, the sky, the rivers, the marketplace, everything is one vibrating consciousness. What you see is not separate from you. It is you appearing in countless forms. But the trick of Maya is convincing you that separation is real. You identify with a tiny ripple and forget the ocean. You cling to me and mine while ignoring that life itself is the dream of Brahman, no different from Brahman itself. Way back thousands of years ago, they said what Hermetic masters later echoed: the universe is mental, the all is mind. And then there was Rumi. He took the vastness of philosophy and poured it into the language of love. To him, being human was the experience of longing for reunion with the source. Every desire, even for worldly achievements, was a disguised thirst for return. He invites us to peel away the illusions with tenderness. Listen when he says, don't get lost in your loneliness. Never let go of the beloved in your heart, for that beloved is the mirror of the divine. To Rumi, the dream was not a cold illusion but a theater of love, the way the infinite invited us back into remembrance. These teachings converge like rivers into one sea. Reality is dreamlike, transient, and yet pointing beyond itself. Whether you call it Maya, mentalism, or love, the conclusion is the same. This world is not stable ground, but a shifting play of appearances arising in mind. And when you understand this, fear begins to dissolve. Why fear? Because what you thought was threatening loses its teeth if it is dream. Imagine a nightmare in which you are being chased. Terrifying, isn't it? Your heart races, your breath shortens. But the second you realize, oh, I am dreaming, the monster cannot touch you. Reality has shifted. The same applies to life. Recognizing that you are within the mind of the all does not mean the dream stops. It means you no longer collapse into it blindly. Suffering arises, but you hold it differently. Joy comes, but you don't cling desperately. Awareness blossoms, and in that awareness is freedom. But let's push further. If the universe is dreamlike, then it is not the only dream. Infinite minds can unfold infinite stories. Modern physics tiptoes toward this, mathematical models of parallel universes, probabilities collapsing into different timelines, quantum realities branching infinitely. To the Hermetic view, this is no surprise. Different aspects of the cosmic dream manifest as different dimensions. Just as in your sleep you may dream one story tonight, another tomorrow, each rich, complete, yet ultimately projections of the same mind. These are the parallel realities of Hermetic philosophy, Worlds within worlds, illusions within illusions. Perhaps, in another dimension, you are reading these same words with another set of eyes, walking another version of your life. And perhaps, from the viewpoint of the all, they are happening together, simultaneously, as facets of a single vast jewel. Why does this matter? Because to sense the dreamlike nature of existence is to shift how you live. Normally we panic when things go wrong, cling when things go well, despair when things end, and fear death most of all. But what if life is a dream within mind? Then loss is not annihilation but transformation. Death is not the end but waking to another level of reality. Joy is not permanent, but neither is sorrow. The rigid grip of fear loosens, and life can flow with more grace. You begin to understand why Buddhist monks meditate, not for escape, but for awakening, to taste the truth beneath the illusion, to become lucid in the dream of life. You might ask, but does this mean nothing is real, that all is meaningless illusion? No, here lies the subtle point. The dream is not false. It is real as appearance, but it is not absolute. It is like a rainbow. It appears, it is stunning, you cannot deny its presence, yet you cannot grasp it in your hand. The universe is like that, real in experience, dreamlike in essence. And you, as part of that universe, are real in experience, but ultimately expressions of the all. You are simultaneously the dreamed and the dreamer. This is where power and humility meet. Power, because if all is mind, then transformation is always possible. Thoughts refine reality. Inner growth reconfigures experience. Consciousness shifts the fabric of the dream. Yet humility, because the dream is not controlled by your small mind alone, it is sustained by the all. You are a co-creator, not the sole architect. To pretend otherwise is to be lost in ego. To recognize this balance is wisdom. And so what is asked of you? Perhaps simply this: to live awake, to remember again and again that the world is dreamlike. When anger flares, remember this too is part of the shifting play. When desire arises, remember it mirrors the deeper hunger for union with the source. When sorrow overwhelms you, remember it is lighter than it seems. It too will dissolve. With this remembrance, life turns from prison into classroom. Every illusion becomes teaching. Every passing moment sparkles with mystery, because you know, none of it is fixed. All of it points to the infinite dreamer dreaming it through you. In this recognition comes a strange joy. It is the joy that Rumi sang, the joy that the yogis described in meditation, the joy Hermetic adepts whispered in secret. It is the joy of knowing that you are already home, already within the all. The search was always circular. You leave to wander, you awaken to return, and you discover you never truly departed. So breathe. Sense the dream flowing around you, the colors on the walls, the sounds in your ears, even these words entering your awareness. All of it is thought within thought, appearance within appearance. Let it remind you that you are not trapped. You are lucid. Life is dream, but dream drenched with meaning, because it mirrors the infinite source. And through every illusion, through every shifting scene, the all is whispering, "Awaken, beloved. You are not separate. You are me, dreaming yourself as you." And when that whisper deepens into knowing, the dream changes, not because it ends, but because you finally awaken to the truth of it, that all is mind, and you are mind, and the universe is a dream, yet within that dream lies eternity. Simulation aspect psychology. What if I told you that everything you think is solid, everything you cling to as certain, might be nothing more than a simulation? What if behind every face, every struggle, every triumph, there lies a silent truth, that life is not a linear march toward death, but a role-playing game designed for immersion? And what if the greatest trick of this simulation is convincing you that it is real, that the stakes matter, that your name and your identity are concrete, when in truth you are eternal, untouchable, and inseparably one with the whole. This is the psychology of the simulation, a study not of technology, but of mind, a study of how consciousness enters a dream, this dream, and forgets itself in order to play, to explore, to learn, to awaken again. Some call it reincarnation, others a cosmic test. But what if, more simply, it is a game, a role-playing adventure where the character you are now is only one mask worn by a boundless being? Life as a role-playing game. The essence of a role-playing game is immersion. When you sit down to play, your mind adopts an identity. You are no longer John, Sarah, Ali, or Maria. You become a knight, a rogue, a monk, a wanderer. You become a character inside a world with its own rules. But this descent into the game requires forgetting, at least partially, that you are playing. For full immersion, you must suspend disbelief. So too with life. To be born is to log in. The eternal essence, call it soul, consciousness, pure awareness, enters the limitation of body and mind. For immersion to be authentic, it accepts amnesia. You forget eternity for a time because remembering too clearly would spoil the drama. After all, the thrill of a game is not knowing how things turn out. If you began with perfect knowledge, no struggle would matter, no decision would weigh anything upon you. And isn't this exactly what psychology observes? Humans are role players. We wear masks, personas as Jung taught. We adapt identities, mother, son, leader, victim, seeker, wanderer. Our day-to-day dramas are story arcs, our love affairs, quests of intimacy, our conflicts, challenges designed by the simulation to nudge growth, provoke maturity, or humble arrogance. When a child plays pretend, psychology calls it development. When an adult lives a scripted role, psychology calls it identity. But behind all roles, behind all masks, the self remains unchanging, watching silently. It never confuses itself completely with the character. It merely allows the illusion for the sake of the play. Death as transition. And then comes death. Most fear it, as if it is game over, the extinguishing of presence. But what if death is nothing more than logging out? Consider a dream. Inside the dream, the events feel real, the joy, the terror, the urgency, convincing beyond a doubt, and then you awaken. Suddenly, the dream dissolves. Its tragedies do not cling to you, its joys do not define you. You are larger, unchanged, simply awakened into the vantage point outside that dream. So too with death. It is not obliteration but transition, a shift from within the game awareness to beyond game awareness. Countless near-death experiences report the same revelation. I was not ending, I was expanding. Psychologically, this points to a truth. The psyche, the deep consciousness, cannot be contained by body alone. The body is the avatar, it must wear down. But the presence that animates it does not vanish. It shifts, detaches from its role, and returns to a wider sense of being. Just as you have logged out from every dream you've ever dreamt, so too will you log out from this dream we call life. And in that moment, fear collapses, because you will see it. The game was never ultimate. You were safe the entire time. The goal of life, awakening. If this is so, then what is the purpose? Why play at all? The goal is not winning, because nothing here is permanent. The goal is not acquiring, because what can the eternal lose or gain? The true goal is awakening, to recognize, even within the immersion, that you are dreaming, to wake up not after death, but within life. Spiritual traditions across the world whisper the same insight: know thyself, remember who you are. In Buddhism, this is enlightenment, waking from the dream of self. In Hindu thought, It is realizing Atman is Brahman, the soul is one with the whole. In mystical Christianity, it is union with the eternal Christ consciousness. All circle back to the same, that you are not merely a character, you are also the dreamer. Psychologically, this is individuation, the process of integrating shadow, persona, unconscious, and ego until self-awareness blossoms. Jung described it as becoming whole. From the lens of simulation, individuation is when the player begins realizing, wait, I am not just inside the game, I am more. And something profound happens when you realize this. Your fear loosens. Your drama becomes art instead of prison. You take failure less personally because you know no failure touches your true self. You act with more courage, for the timer of death no longer enslaves you, and you start to glimpse that you are one with the all, the dream, the dreamer, the worlds within worlds. Distractions, religions, politics, identities. But if awakening is the goal, why are so many lost? Because the game has distractions, very convincing side quests. Religion, politics, identity. Not inherently evil, but designed as attachments. They give texture to the illusion, making the roles thicker, the storylines stickier. Religions can be beautiful guides back to truth, or rigid dogmas that chain minds. Politics can be the art of collective responsibility, or endless division to keep people fighting shadows. Identities can express creativity, or cages reinforced by fear. From the simulation perspective, these are traps of immersion. The game persuades you, you are only your party, your faction, your role, your tribe. And once you believe that, awakening is postponed. You forget eternity more deeply. You cling, you resist, you attack, you defend. Psychologically, it mirrors the ego in survival mode. The ego thrives on separateness, comparison, and scarcity. It insists, I am only this body, this nation, this faith. But in truth, the self is vast, borderless, timeless. The shadow psychology of the game. Every RPG has its dark zones. So too does life. The shadow is the unacknowledged material of the psyche. The buried fears, suppressed desires, painful memories. In simulation terms, it is the part of the map we avoid. But paradoxically, the treasure is often hidden there. Confronting shadow is part of awakening. If life is a game, then the monsters you battle are not external. They are mirrors of your inner landscape. Anger, greed, envy, terror. These opponents are psychological archetypes. And every time you confront one with awareness, you integrate it, reclaiming more of yourself. Individuation requires facing them. Like a game mechanic, shadow integration deepens the play until awakening dawns, breaking the illusion. So how does one awaken within the simulation? First, by questioning. Refuse to take the rules at face value. Notice how identity is constructed, how emotions surge and vanish, how thoughts are narratives on a screen. See them as game text rather than ultimate truth. Second, silence. In stillness, you notice the player separate from the character. Meditation, deep reflection, or even profound suffering can induce that silent gap. In that gap, awareness sees itself. Third, integration. Stop running from shadow. See every fear, every conflict, as part of the play designed for your growth. Instead of rejecting, absorb. That transforms monsters into allies. And slowly, realization grows. I am dreaming. I am eternal. I am one with all of it. The final transition. One day, whether through death or profound realization, you will step back. The character's journey will end, but you will remain, and you will not mourn. You will marvel, for every struggle will appear as a scene, every heartbreak as a chapter, every wound as part of the story designed to wake you. And maybe, just maybe, you will choose to enter again. Another role, another immersion, another game. But this time, you will remember sooner. You will live lighter. You will play boldly. Because you will know, death is transition, life is dream, and you are the dreamer who cannot be lost. You are not merely a player. You are the eternal witness. You are one with the all. And now, play consciously, because the game is still unfolding. The illusion of external authority. Most people live bound, not by chains of iron, but by invisible currents of thought and belief. They speak of freedom, but their vision of freedom is merely granted permission. Permission from governments, permission from cultural systems, permission from religious institutions, permission from forces outside themselves. They wait for saviors, leaders, and authorities to come and liberate them, not realizing that by waiting, they reinforce the illusion of their own helplessness. This entire pattern of dependence, of deferring power to external mechanisms, begins early. We are raised to trust the voice from above. The parent, the teacher, the preacher, the policeman, the politician. From childhood stories to adult policies, every level of life carries the same message. Someone else knows what is best for you. Submit and you will be safe, comply and you will be rewarded. This conditioning becomes so powerful, so deeply ingrained, that people no longer notice that their sense of reality itself has been hijacked. They do not see that they are the ones directing reality through assumptions, not institutions. The truth is radical in its simplicity. You do not need saving. You need awakening. And awakening is not waiting, it's choosing. Creation depends on assumptions, and assumptions direct perception. What you assume about yourself, your possibilities, and reality itself becomes the invisible architecture through which your life unfolds. Governments may try to dictate laws, religions may offer moral frameworks, leaders may whisper promises of protection, but none of this has final authority over your experience unless you grant it. External control functions only through your agreement with it. The agreement may be unconscious, but it is still yours. This is where the psychology of freedom begins, not in resistance to external powers, but in the reclamation of internal authorship. Every thought is a choice. Every assumption, even the one you do not notice, carries creative weight. You are not a passive receiver. You are the projector. Reality is not handed to you by some ruling elite, politician, or divine savior. It is interpreted, shaped, and defined through your assumptions about what is possible right now. The tragedy of the human condition lies not in oppression itself, but in belief in the story of oppression. Fear directs this story, regret chains it to the past, and dependence keeps it alive. Fear says, if you don't obey the external authority, you will suffer. Regret whispers, you've already wasted your chance. Your freedom is gone. Dependence insists, you need someone stronger than you to create safety for you. Each of these is an illusion, a psychological fog that blinds you from seeing the obvious. Your authority is here, immediate in the present moment. It was never elsewhere. What then is freedom? Not the absence of restraint, not the myth of a savior who finally redeems humanity. Freedom is to awaken to your current creative power. It is to realize that alignment with your assumptions right now is what builds your reality. The present moment is the only authority. No institution can replace it. No preacher can take it from you. To live in the present moment, embodying assumptions consciously, is the act of liberation. And once you fully grasp this, you stop chasing freedom out there and begin creating freedom in here. The trap of fear, regret, and dependence. Fear is the most reliable tool of external authority. Every system that has ever sought to control humanity begins with a narrative of fear. Governments warn of chaos waiting outside their borders. Religions warn of eternal punishment awaiting beyond the grave. Societies warn of exclusion, ostracism, or ridicule if you think differently. Fear functions like barbed wire. It need not physically restrain you, for once planted in your psyche, you restrain yourself. And yet, fear is never real in the present. It always gestures toward the future. You will suffer, but notice, this is merely an assumption, and ironically, an assumption that you agree to. When you allow fear to dictate your choices, you are unconsciously granting authority to an imagined outcome. You direct reality through this agreement, and then live surprised when life reflects it back. What you feared takes shape, not because the authority was correct, but because you believed it. Regret plays the opposite role, where fear chains you to a hypothetical future. Regret binds you to a memory of the past. Authority loves this, because if you feel you have failed before, they can promise redemption later. You are told that you must atone, repent, or wait for forgiveness. In the meantime, you are dependent. The tragedy is that neither the past nor future exists. Only the assumption you hold right now exists. Regret repeats, you missed your chance, so it's too late. But what is too late, except another assumption? Dependence breeds when fear and regret work together. You are afraid of the future, ashamed of the past, and therefore cling to the myth of an external savior. Governments promise safety. Religions promise salvation. Leaders promise deliverance. Each promise requires you to surrender your authority. You comply because you believe your power is insufficient. But in truth, the very act of dependence is the act of creating limitation. This is the illusion that traps the mind, believing power resides elsewhere. But pause and examine carefully. Without your belief, without your assumption, could fear control you? Could regret bind you? Could dependence seduce you? No, they require your participation. Assumptions as creative forces. Reality bends not to external decrees, but to your internal assumptions. This is not mystical. It is psychological law. You assume something, you act according to it, you perceive confirmation of it, and soon your entire reality organizes around it. Assumptions are lenses. One person assumes the world is hostile and finds proof everywhere. Another assumes the world is abundant and opportunities appear. Authority is irrelevant. The lens creates the experience. This is why people under the same government, the same social order, live radically different lives. Some thrive, some suffer, some remain indifferent. If authority were the true determinant, all citizens would share the same fate, but they don't. Why? Because assumptions shape reality from within. The freedom you seek is not granted. It is lived through choosing assumptions consciously. If you assume you are free, your actions align with freedom. If you assume you are trapped, every gesture reinforces captivity. Both assumptions create reality. The difference is whether you chose them consciously or received them passively from external voices. Aligning with the present moment. The present moment is not neutral. It is the only creative stage that exists. You project into it constantly, but most do so unconsciously, reliving their fears or regrets. To align with the present moment means to become acutely aware of what you are assuming right now. What story are you authoring? What belief are you carrying? This is not passive mindfulness. It is active authorship. When you align with the present, you withdraw projection from external saviors. You stop waiting for freedom to arrive and instead embody freedom now. If freedom feels distant, it is because you assume distance. If freedom feels conditional, it is because you assume conditions. But freedom is here, not an external gift, but an inward claim. Freedom as creation. Freedom is not the erasure of authority, but the direct recognition that authority begins within. Freedom means remembering you are the creator of the lens. Creation psychology, means living as though the stage is set by your assumptions and nothing else. And when you do this, you stop negotiating with systems for scraps of permission. Instead, you embody sovereignty now. True creation is not a heroic battle against governments or institutions. It is subtle, internal, immediate. The cage collapses when you stop agreeing with it. The savior disappears when you realize you are not lost. Reality changes the moment you choose differently, claiming inner authority. The great lie of history has been that freedom is external. People rebel, overthrow regimes, replace leaders, only to find the same patterns repeat. Why? Because the true authority was never outside, it was always the assumptions within. Unless you awaken to this law of creation psychology, you remain enslaved by new forms of the same trap. But once you understand, truly understand, that you direct reality through assumptions, everything changes. You cease fearing governments, you cease waiting for saviors, you cease begging for validation. You live here, now, authoring. Each choice, each assumption becomes your declaration of sovereignty. Freedom is not something you wait for or beg for. It's something you live. And once claimed, no external power can counterfeit it.